Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We are recording from the Rabbi Cho Sanctuary on Wednesday, May 7th, and we are in the middle of, I think, a really important conversation that applies to pretty much everybody in the world and certainly everybody at Temple Emmanuel. And Michelle, welcome for it. So just to recap, if you weren't watching last week, this whole framing comes from our teacher, Dr. Sara Labaton, who is the Director of Learning for Hartman. And she asked the question, this is by way of intro and framing, what do we do with peace in this unpeaceful world, peace in this very troubled world? And she notes that the prophetic ideas and ideals of Isaiah, the lion will lie down with the lamb, not realistic. And she notes that the notion of nations beating their swords into plowshares, not realistic. Actually, on today's news, we woke up to India and Pakistan, really exchanging arms. It's such a not peaceful world. And she says, should we try to think about peace differently? And what about the rabbinic ideals of peace, which are very much not Isaiah? Isaiah is all lofty. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. Rabbinic ideals, she points out, are very small, very local, and very, very imperfect. Last week, what you missed, Michelle, was the category of Shalom bayit, and we examined the teshuvah of Ovadia Yosef, of a woman whose marriage could really only be sustained on the basis of not sharing transparency with her husband for all the reasons that Elisa especially brought out last week. And Ovadia Yosef's ruling was keep the marriage alive by a material omission of facts that any husband would want to know, that any partner would want to know. That's Shalom bayit. Imperfect. And that was last week. This week, we're going to talk about a whole other category, which is Mipnei Darchei Shalom. It's the idea of being nice to people so that they will be nice to you. It's kind of an entirely transactional approach to peace. An entirely, like everything we do, calculated to engender a nice counter response, small, local, imperfect. We're going to look at 3 examples of that from the Talmud, from the tractate Gittin, and then we're going to contrast that with another text, which I think is Daniel Hartman's favorite rabbinic text. At least he teaches it every year. I've learned it with him 13 times in Jerusalem. So I think if he teaches it every summer for 13 summers, he must like it. And we'll close with that. So let's thank God for the gift of learning Torah together.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam,
asher kidshanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. V'harev na Adonai Eloheinu et divrei Toratcha b'finu v'fi amcha be'Yisrael v'nihya anachnu v'tzatza'enu v'tzatza'ei amcha be'Yisrael kulanu yodei shemecha v'lamdei Toratecha lishma Baruch atah Adonai hamelamed Torah la'amo Yisrael Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato Baruch atah Adonai notein haTorah. So the Talmud in the tractate Gittin is going to give us 3 different vignettes where we do nice things for one another, Mipnei Darchei Shalom, and you're going to see that it kind of expands. The first vignette is going to be Jews with Jews, and not only Jews with Jews, but Jews who are very committed to liturgical worship. So any synagogue, ours included, there's like 20 people who pray every day. And this is the 20 people who pray every day. So these are the same tribes, same religion, same community, and within the community, the most connected that they are to each other. The 20 out of the 4,000 who come every day. And then the second is going to be Jews and the non-Jewish poor. That's the second category, Jews and the non-Jewish poor. And then the third is going to be Jews and the entire non-Jewish world. Not only non-Jewish poor, but non-Jewish everybody. And we're going to see the same category, like the leitmotif, like the thread that runs through it all. So, Elise, you want to pick up on page 1. These things were declared. Right here. These things were declared.
These things were declared by the sages because they are ways that foster harmony. A Kohen reads first from the Torah scroll in the synagogue, after him a Levi, after him a Yisrael, because this is one of the ways that foster harmony.
Okay, so this is something that, we know, those of us who go to shul, those who go to minyan, know about this. the Kohen gets the first, the Levi gets the second, an Israelite gets the third. Mipnei Darchei Shalom, because it fosters harmony. Dan, I want to do something I've never done since the pandemic, which is turn to you first and say, Dan Nesson, as the minyan guy, you own the record for most services prayed in the history of Temple Emmanuel. What do you think about this?
Well, at first blush, it's kind of weird.
Is your mic on, by the way?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's on.
Okay.
Yes. So my first reaction is it is kind of weird, because if you have the same 20 people coming to shul all the time, and amongst them is like 2 or 3 Kohanim and 2 or 3 Leviim, and then you have a bunch of people that have yortzites or smachot, anniversaries, birthdays, whatever, then if we follow this rule, there's not going to be so much, a shalom bayit, because people just don't have the chance to get an aliyah. So we actually break this rule quite often.
So inquiring minds want to know, Dan Nesson, and you are the you're the Mora de Asra here. Does Temple Emmanuel follow this rule? Kohen, Levi, Israelite. What's the answer, Dan?
Yeah, the answer is yes, and in other words, sometimes we do, and sometimes we do. Like on a Monday morning, if there's just a few people there, and it's the regulars, I will oftentimes look for a Kohen and then a Levi in the third aliyah. If on the other hand there are people there that should have an aliyah, because of their simcha or birthday, or it's a bar mitzvah family, whatever, then I don't follow that rule. And I know that here in the shul on Shabbat morning, we usually don't do that. Oftentimes, because if we have bnei mitzvah families, it kind of changes the order, the structure.
So on Shabbat morning, we really don't. We don't. So what's the nature of human relationship that this rule imagines?
Well, isn't it also predicated on a much smaller kahal? Like, I feel like on a given Shabbat morning, how many Kohanim do we have, and how many Leviim do we have, and we have so many more that I'm not sure it would be Darchei Shalom. Like, how do you pick?
Right.
That's true. Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day. I was like looking around the sanctuary, and then looking around in the chapel, and realizing that in the case that it should be something like less than 1 in 20 should be a Kohen or a Levi. Yeah.
So
but like all the time we have like 4 or 5 Kohanim.
Okay, so I want to zoom out. I want to zoom out of this. We're about to die in the garden of minutia here. I want to zoom out of the garden of minutia where we're floundering over here, and I want to ask a question. So this seems to be about coming up with a protocol. We're gonna come up with a protocol which creates an order where everybody knows what's up, and everybody kind of gets the deal, and everybody kind of gets the drill. And this is the protocol that, life is a jungle, and this will this is a traffic section and the traffic lights in the jungle, and it creates peace. What do you think of that as an idea? And what are, aside from this recondite Torah reading ritual, what are other examples where we resort to protocols to create peace? And do we think it's a good idea or not?
It reminds me of right of way on a road, where theoretically that somebody who's turning right has priority over somebody who's turning left at the same intersection when the light is green. And if everybody knows the protocols, it does make things work more smoothly. But then there's always that person that's like, oh no, you go. And you're like, but it's your right of way.
Yeah, so my son is an 8th grader this year at school, which means that they are the graduating class of the school, and there are certain rights and responsibilities that the school has given them as 8th graders that 7th graders and 6th graders do not have. And everybody understands, for the special, candle lighting, that's going to be done by the 8th graders. And it's something that people can Mipnei Darchei Shalom, right? You know that you're not going to get upset that somebody gets this special honor, because obviously they get that. And I think about when I was in high school, you would have a theater program, and whoever the main role is usually went to an upperclassman. Why? Maybe they were the best, maybe they were not the best, but they're an upperclassman and this is their last chance.
So long as David Rosenberg isn't in the
Yes.
class. So basically, so let me just note, and then we're going to pivot here, that we have moved from the lion lying down with the lamb, and they all eat straw. We have moved from nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore, to a right away, or the seniors get privileges. Mipnei Darchei Shalom, that, right? So we've obviously lost something in terms of vision and ambition.
This is lofty. This is ideal.
Right. So, but let's keep it going because it's going to build. So, Michelle, will you pick up on page 2? This is. Let me just frame to get you into deep agricultural ancient Israel. So there's a bunch of laws in Leviticus and Deuteronomy about that apply to farmers in ancient Israel. They are called Peah, Leket, and Shechacha. And what they are designed to do is if you are a farmer in ancient Israel, you are commanded to leave a corner of your field, that's called Peah, for the poor of Israel to come and get some food. And you are commanded with Leket. Leket is gleanings, harvest grain gleanings that fall to the ground just in the course of gathering in your gleanings. Not that I know what a gleaning is. I just get it from the supermarket. But if you could imagine actually gathering up your gleanings, if the gleanings fall to the floor, that is called leket. You can't pick it up. You need to leave it for the Jewish poor. And then there's the category that applies especially to 60-something-year-old Israelites called shechacha. What if you forget? You forget that you forgot to go and do a particular category of your produce, and you remember, oh, I forgot, I got to go back to that area and do it. The answer is no. Shechacha, if you forgot it, you have to leave it for the Jewish poor. So the corner of the field, peah, the gleanings that fall to the ground, leket, and shechacha, what, oops, I forgot, no, I can't go back and get it. You leave those for the Jewish poor. And now the Talmud is going to ask, what happens if Gentile poor start taking the food from the Israelite farmer that was intended for the Jewish poor?
We do not interfere with poor idolaters who partake of leket, shechacha, or peah, because this is one of the ways that foster harmony.
Okay, so obviously this builds on the Kohen Levi Yisrael, and it's another protocol, but this feels more than just a travel protocol or a right-of-way protocol or a graduation ceremony protocol. What do you think this is saying, and are you proud to have this in our tradition?
Yes.
Say
It seems
more.
like a nice thing. Anyone who is deserving, who needs food, can come and get food. And even though this is something that we left specifically for this one deserving person that we know about, if somebody else comes and needs it, they can have it.
And my friend Elisa Berger, would you say that this is motivated by a transaction or a relationship? Put it this way. If you had been asked by the Jewish people to draft this piece of Talmud, that we have a problem, ancient farmers are finding that Gentile poor are taking their peah, shechacha, and leket, tell us what to do. Would you have written it this way? That is to say, leave it for them because it will promote peace. You don't want Gentiles, there's more of them than us. You don't want Gentiles coming to do a pogrom against us, so this will keep the peace? Or would you have come up with a different rationale?
Well, it's hard because there is a challenge in that when people outside of your community come and take the resources that are set aside for your community, it means there are fewer resources to go around in your community. So there is a challenge. It's not an automatic good for the poor in your own community. At the same time, I feel like the Darchei Shalom feels like it encapsulates the full challenge of the situation. On the one hand, it is the right thing to do to give food to the hungry. On the other hand, the more food you give to the hungry outside of your community, the less food you have for the hungry in your community.
It's crazy, Lisa. Your comment just made me see something I didn't see at all. This little technical Mishnah, that's the country and the world right now. This is the immigration crisis. Immigrants coming from all over the world to Germany, immigrants coming from all over from Turkey and from Syria, and from Latin America and from Mexico to America, right? This is the issue that has created populist revolt in nation after nation. The more that you feed the poor human who happens to be a human but is not your human, the less you have for your own humans. And so you think this strikes the right balance.
I'm not sure if it strikes a balance. I think it just says the reality, which is like, it doesn't say go out and advertise that you have all of this produce in the fields. It doesn't say that you should put up a food bank station and say anyone who's hungry come and eat it. It just says, like, if it happens that somebody comes by, you don't say anything.
And you're comfortable with it not saying anything because of the transaction of it. You don't want a pogrom on your hands.
I'm not sure it's about a pogrom. I feel like it's just about the reality. Like, this is not saying.
Well, it's Mipnei Darchei Shalom. It will promote peace. What are they trying to avoid by saying it will promote peace?
What about just somebody that's very upset and angry and hungry and needs supplies? Like, I'm not sure you have to go to the pogrom example. I think you could also just go to a reality where poor people who are hungry and need resources would be upset if you have resources lying in the field that you refuse to share.
Michelle,
Wes,
what's your take?
I'm so interested in what about this troubles you, because to me, it seems like treat others the way you would want to be treated. So I'm curious.
Oh, my friend, thank you for asking. That's exactly what troubles me. If I were on the committee to write this thing up, I might, and you were given three alternatives. You were given three drafts, right? Let the non-Jewish poor eat the agricultural stuff, the peah, shechacha, and leket, because it will promote peace. That's option one. Option two is let them eat it because treat others the way you would want to be treated. If you were the hungry poor, you'd want it, therefore let them have it. And the third is let them eat it because everybody is created b'tselem Elohim, in the image of God. What I'm not critical of it, I'm curious about it, and I'm asking a question about it because this feels like transactional Torah, right? In other words, if the Mishnah had read, let them eat because they too are created in the image of God, or let them eat because v'ahavta l'recha kamocha, if you were hungry, you'd want to eat, or if it was your kid that was hungry, you'd want your kid to eat, right? Then now it's at a higher level, like everybody has the spark of God in them, everybody's b'tselem Elohim, but the stated reason feels transactional. So I'm not critical, but I am definitely noting and observing that it's a transactional rather than relational Torah.
I wonder about that because I think that Mipnei Darchei Shalom is actually a pretty high bar, right? That I have to think in an abstraction about what it would look like to create a fair and just universe where people can get along with each other even when they're really different. I feel like that requires a much higher leap than just because they were created in the image of God, which, okay, I'm created in the image of God, you're created in the image of God. It feels like it requires less intellectual reach.
Why? Okay. Let's bring it to this sanctuary. We've been in a sacred relationship with Project Manna for 36 years. Did we do it Mipnei Darchei Shalom, or did we do it Mipnei Ahava? Did we do it Mipnei Tselem Elohim? Did we do it because it will promote peace between the Black community and the Jewish community, or did we do it because we're all committed to Isaiah's vision of combating hunger in anybody who's hungry? And so it feels to me like that this is, again, I'm not critical, but I'm naming this is kind of a lower level thing. We'll have peaceful relations rather than a higher order thing. We're seeing everybody.
But on the same token, we chose Project Manna because our members are engaged with that particular church and volunteer with that church. They are part of our community, even though they're extended community. Right. And we don't support other food pantries or other food. We don't have Project Manna for everybody. The Alston Brighton Food Pantry right around the corner.
Exactly. Project Manna is relational. We are in a covenantal relationship with this Black Baptist church for 36 years. It's not transactional, it's relational. That's the theory, and right? So I'm just saying this feels to me like it doesn't.
I feel like we're having a definitional challenge, right? Because as I'm understanding you are interpreting Mipnei Darchei Shalom as I'm doing this because it's transactional.
Because it will
Right?
be peace.
That's your
because
definition.
It promotes peace.
The transactional thing is I'll get peace out of this if I do it. So as I read Mipnei Darchei Shalom, I read it as because actually there's a value in place that we need to be at peace with others.
But this is also not proactive. There's also a not proactive piece.
Let's get to the third one. And Michelle, if you'll read this, but here's my lens for this as you're reading this.
That I can't read that.
Imagine, okay, I'll read it. Imagine it's okay. God, there's a critic in every corner. Okay, so imagine a non-Jew, a pastor, a non-Jewish pastor, a non-Jewish neighbor, a non-Jewish parent on your kid's little league team, who wants to explore about Judaism, and you're going to teach them this. And my question to you is, how do you feel about teaching this? Okay. Does it make us look? What kind of look is it for us? Is it a good look for us, or is it less than a good look for us? Okay, so I'll read. And this is very famous teaching. We provide financial support to the Gentile poor, along with the Jewish poor. We visit the Gentile sick, along with the Jewish sick. We bury the Gentile dead, along with the Jewish dead. Mipnei Darchei Shalom, because these are the ways that promote peace. Okay.
Beautiful. Right.
You say beautiful.
Beautiful.
What's wrong
Say
with
more.
it?
Okay.
So I think we're having a definitional challenge in that you're interpreting, and look, it could be that you are correct, that Mipnei Darchei Shalom is like, look, we don't actually want to have anything to do with these people, but we want to avoid a pogrom. I just feel like there's another read to this, which is because that's the way to be a community at peace with the world and at peace with ourselves. And we're in this lifetime to create the value of peace in this world. And that means you got to suck it up. And even if you think they're other than you still got to provide.
And this text is even more beautiful than the last text. Because the last text was just like, if they wander in your fields and they happen to gather something, you don't say anything. But it's not like you're proactively going out and saying, like, here's some extra corn, here's some extra barley. This is actually, we actively give to everyone in need.
So I will say that, Mr. Nesson, where are you on this text?
I will say.
No, Lord, no, because then I want to make an assertion. I want to just say that the Siddur, the people who prepared the anthology of our Siddur, think you're right, but I want to raise a question about that. But Dan, how do you feel about this?
Well, yeah, I mean, it is complex because I both points are totally valid.
Tell them why my point is better.
Well, I hear and I feel the idea of Tzelem Elohim, in we want to promote the Jewish community and who we are as Jews as doing the right thing all the time. And that includes, being kind to everybody, being appropriate behavior, and connecting with everybody. On the other hand, when you think about when some of these things were written and how true they've been for millennia, that in order for Jews to survive as a people, oftentimes, as Michelle used so eloquently said, "Suck it up." That we have to sometimes do the things that we may not want to do, for a transactional relationship as opposed to a deeper personal relationship. And oftentimes, the communities were in smaller communities, they were so connected, so that if you live in a smaller community, that your neighbors down the street were not Jewish, and yet these are the people that you interacted with on a daily basis, that you wanted to promote a connection with them. So the answer is yes, and thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, but so I want to so here's why I think that the Siddur editors think you're right, and then I'll tell you why I have a question about it. The Siddur editors think you're right because in the morning minyan, at about 7:03 every morning, the Shliach Tzibor, the person who's leading services, gets to pick some juicy, beautiful, evocative text, after which the congregation, or the mourners of the congregation, say Kaddish Rabbanan, which is at 7:04. Love, order, love routine. Every day at 7:03, we just read a beautiful text. Every day at 7:04, that first Kaddish Rabbanan. And the editors of the Siddur have given us like the top 10 hits of Jewish texts that are easy to love, and this makes the list, okay? Here's why I never pick it. Because number one, I'm never there at 7:04. But number two, even if I were, I wouldn't pick it. And here's why. Because what I have echoing in my head is the category of Andy Stanley about deal friends and real friends. And I think those are real categories. Deal friends are your friends, but your friends because of the deal. Your friends so long as the deal. When the deal is over, the friendship is over. Real friends aren't contingent on a deal. Real friends are there for good, and there's no deal. You're just friends, and it's real. And it feels to me, so deal friends are certainly better than no friends, and deal friends are certainly better than enemies. So I concede that. But I'm wondering about, this is to Sara Labaton's point, that rabbinic ideals of peace are not Isaiah. They're not lofty. They're not lion and lamb. They're gritty. Here's a marriage, and keep going with the marriage. Just wife, never tell him what he would want to know. And it feels to me that this is along that same order of an imperfect kind of peace. It's not a real friendship. It's a deal friendship, and that's good enough.
But so I want to introduce a third category. Let's imagine you have a really crotchety neighbor, okay? They are really struggling. They live alone. They've lost every family member in their life. They're struggling financially, and they are extremely unpleasant. Like, they are the ones that are out yelling at the kids who throw balls in their yard, and they're not nice neighbors. However, people deserve to eat, and they deserve to have a place to live. And so, Mipnei Darchei Shalom, it's not that they're not a deal friend. They've got nothing to offer you. They're not going to be out there shoveling your walk. They're not going to be doing anything nice for you. And you probably don't want to spend a lot of time with them. But Mipnei Darchei Shalom would inspire you to give them the support that they need. And that's not a deal friend, and that's not a real friend, but it is really important.
Right. I'm not a critic of this concept. I'm just noting that it's limited. It is in the Sara Labaton universe. It is small and imperfect. I want to just hold the conversation because I want to bring in the last piece, which is Daniel Hartman's Torah. I have literally learned this 13 times at the feet of Daniel Hartman every year in Jerusalem at the Hartman Institute. So, Aliza, will you pick this up with Rabbi Shimon ben Shetach? And my question for you is, how does this vision of moving about in the universe compare with what we've been reading?
Rabbi Shimon ben Shetach was in the cotton trade. One day his students said to him, "We will buy you a donkey so you won't have to work so hard." They bought a donkey for him from an idolater, and it happened that a precious gem was hanging from its neck. The students came to him and said, "From now on you won't have to work anymore." He replied, "Why not?" They explained, "We bought you a donkey from an idolater and we found a precious gem hanging from its neck." Rabbi Shimon said, "And did its owner know about the gem?" "No," they replied. And he then said, "Go and return it." But his students argued, "Is it not permitted to keep a lost article of an idolater?" Shimon ben Shetach answered them, "Do you think that Shimon ben Shetach is a barbarian?" Shimon ben Shetach wanted to hear the words, "Blessed is the God of Jews," more than to receive all the financial rewards of this world.
Okay, so this story is, you go to a cool thrift store in Cambridge to buy a jacket, and you spend your $20 for the jacket, and lo and behold, inside the jacket is cash, or inside the jacket is a beautiful family heirloom watch. Let's say technically it's yours. Do you return it? So according to this story, Shimon ben Shetach students bought the animal. The animal came with a gem. The gem would have materially changed his life. He won the lottery. And what this story posits is, according to the laws of the Talmud and Jewish tradition, he could keep it because it only came from an idolater. Therefore, he could keep it. And Shimon ben Shetach says, "Yuck, that's not me. That's not who I want to be. That's not who I aspire to be. That's not the way I want to roll in the world. Give this back." And he wants to give it back so that the idolater who gets it back will say, "Wow, I don't know much about Judaism. I don't know anything about this Jewish God. But the people who are in covenantal relationship with this Jewish God, they're mensches. I love that." And that's what Shimon ben Shetach says. So I want to just offer up I guess I'll offer up the question. How does that mode of being, the Shimon ben Shetach story, thank you, Daniel Hartman, how does that compare with the Mipnei Darchei Shalom mode of being for you?
Honestly, I know you're trying very hard
I'm not
to draw
trying.
a distinction between the two,
Yeah.
but I think a culture of Mipnei Darchei Shalom creates Shimon ben Shetach.
Say more.
I think the idea that and by the way, you're presenting it sort of as if it's this small thing. I actually think Mipnei Darchei Shalom is a very big thing. It's a very hard thing because we have to overcome ourselves in ways that we don't want to. And so in this case, when we're trained to say, yes, it's true that the law would say that maybe only Jewish people should pick up the leket and the shichacha and the peah, but if there's somebody else there, overcome yourself. Mipnei Darchei Shalom, because there's a world that has greater ideals, and those ideals are ideals of a peaceful, loving world that you start. You don't wait for somebody else to create that peace with you. You start that peace, and you have to put in the bricks. And Shimon ben Shetach is actually the reward for a culture that plants those ideas at every stage and phase.
Beautiful. Thank you, Michelle. Dan and Elisa, how do you see the relationship between Shimon ben Shetach and Mipnei Darchei Shalom?
Michelle, I'm so glad to have you back. I deeply agree with Michelle. I just think that it's really important, and I think that Mipnei Darchei Shalom is, as Michelle says, it's lofty and it's hard, and I think that it's okay to be to do things because that's a value and not necessarily because you want to. Like, who wants to give up winning the lottery? Like, who wants to give up all that? He's clearly somebody he's working in the cotton trade. He's struggling every single day. His students buy him this donkey to make his life easier, and we get this sense that life is hard for him.
And he won the lottery.
He won the lottery. He could have never worked again. And giving that up, you have to believe in some bigger cause to give that up.
So I wanna plug this now into Sara Labaton's bigger question, which is the world's on fire. Is Mipnei Darchei Shalom and trying our best to become Shimon ben Shetach, is that an adequate response to a world on fire? In other words, India and Pakistan, and Israel and Gaza, and Russia and Ukraine, and the political divide, and what we do in our homes and at 385 Worth Street in 02458 and 02459 is we do our best to create Mipnei Darchei Shalom. Is that, and we do our best to create Shalom bayit, is that an adequate response to a world on fire?
Why do you assume that it's only here? Right? I think it's wherever you are and wherever you are going. And I think while it can start right here, it's also infinitely expandable. Like, I think about...
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you an example. So I'm in Jerusalem and I'm in a taxi cab, and I have what becomes very clearly an Arab Israeli and person who is a Muslim there in the car, born in Jerusalem, he tells me. And there has been, if you've heard, a little bit of tension, right, in Israel these days. And I have the choice in that moment. Do I say, oi, there's so much that potentially stands in between us? Or do I ask about his children and try to have the opportunity to create some commonality in that moment? Right? I would say one of the greatest, most kind of touching moments of my journey to Israel, and there were a lot of them, came in this moment when, this man smiled and showed me pictures of his children. And I thought, wow, maybe in this small little kernel, right, if we could somehow just talk to each other, and I know it's not a lot, it's a little, but could we grow that and grow that and grow that? I would pray for that. I would hope for that. And it doesn't start if you say, hey, you're really different from me, and you probably think different than I think about politics and about Israel, and therefore we're going to stop talking.
I'd love to end this class with that story. That's such a beautiful story and such a powerful story, and we all are so starving for hope, and we're all so thirsty for hope, that I would love to let the class end with that hopeful story. You're in a cab with an Israeli Palestinian, a Muslim, an Arab, what you have in common is your humanity, your curiosity, your decency. He has a family, you have a family, you're humans. He shows you your pictures. It's a wrap. Mic drop. Would love that. But where my mind goes to when I hear about that is Oded Lifshitz, who used to drive the Palestinians from Gaza to their medical appointments. And he was murdered by the Palestinians. And his wife, the widow. And I was in his cactus garden, and I met with his grandson. And his wife, who is now widowed, said, my husband tried to create decency one person at a time, and he's dead. They murdered him. So when I hear your story, I want to do a mic drop and say, Amen, Amen, Amen. See you next week. And instead I say Oded Lifshitz, and I say Deborah Trone, and I say all those lovely idealists who were murdered. And then I also say but what a hot mess the world is in now. Where are we if we lose hope? So I don't know. I don't know how to end the class.
But that's this Torah. That's this Torah. That's Mipnei Darchei Shalom. Is not they're going to do it back to you. Is not that they're going to be appropriate. Is not that you are buying an insurance policy for life. It's that that's the right thing to do, and you do it regardless. And I think if Oded were around, he dedicated his life. Even, okay, we didn't have October 7th, but we certainly have intifadas, and we certainly had wars, and we certainly had acts of terror. And he dedicated his life to peace in that time, in the wake of violence. I don't think he'd want his legacy to be give up. I think he'd want his legacy to be Mipnei Darchei Shalom, keep working. Dedicate yourself to this Torah. Do the right thing, regardless of what happens.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Shabbat Shalom.